Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Yesterday I was on Facebook and I came across one of those photographs where a famous person is making a statement and there's a quote from that person and it's really designed to ignite discussion. So I saw this photograph of Hillary Clinton, and in the photograph it has a quote from her. And the quote says, "Let's keep telling the world over and over again that yes, women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights, once and for all." So that was the statement in the photograph. And this photograph was posted around the time when there was controversy about some statements that Donald Trump made dealing with abortion. Donald Trump was asked about his position on abortion, and he talked about how he was pro-life, and they asked him some questions. They asked him if he would punish a woman who had an abortion, and he said yes, and that created a firestorm. So when I saw this photograph that I'm telling you about, the first thing I thought about was the issue of abortion, and it just made me think about something. It prompted a question in my mind. And I'm going to read the question that I posted on my personal Facebook page. And before I go any further, I want you all to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I will include links in the description box. But this question that I raised, I posted it on my blog Facebook page and on my personal Facebook page. On my personal Facebook page, there was a lot of discussion in response to the question. So here's the question that I raised. I said, I understand that women's rights are human rights, but I have a question. How does destroying human life in the womb promote human rights? That was my question. And in response, there was a lot of comments, a lot of debate about the issue of abortion. Because for me, I saw a conflict. You're talking about how women's rights is promoting human rights. And I get that in many respects. I get that. I understand that. I understand it in terms of equal pay, equal treatment. I understand it in terms of ending domestic abuse, women having equal rights in the workplace and in society. But when it comes to the issue of abortion, I don't understand equating abortion to human rights. Because you can't promote human rights by destroying human life. Because that's what it is, human life. So I got into this extensive debate with my friends and colleagues about this issue. Like, people think that you have to be in one camp or the other on everything. See, as I pointed out on Facebook, I reject this groupthink mentality. I reject the notion of ideological checklists. See, I analyze issues issue by issue. I don't take a slate of ideas that some party or some political ideology gives me and just blindly embrace them. I analyze each issue. I determine whether or not the issue is logical. I determine whether or not the position is consistent with my values and just with common sense and reason. And I find that abortion is just morally wrong. It's the destruction of human life. There's no debate about that, when you just think about it logically. In this discussion that I had on Facebook, some people said, well, the fetus is really just an extension of the woman's body. The fetus is just a part of her body and she can do with her body as she chooses. But my point is this. That fetus has its own arms, legs, its own brain, its own heart, and other organs. It is not merely an extension of the woman's body. It is a separate entity that depends on the woman's body, but it is not merely a part of her body like an arm or a leg or her head. It's a separate entity. And some people said, well, it's not even alive. They went that far to say something like that. And they got into a whole drawn out debate about sustainability outside of the womb and all that stuff. And I understand where that comes from. It comes from that case Roe v. Wade. And I'm not even talking about the legal issues right now. That's not what I'm addressing. I'm just talking about from a common sense perspective, from a moral perspective. That's what I'm talking about. That fetus has a heart. It's alive. It moves. It feels things. It sustains itself by consuming nutrients from the mother. It is alive for all intents and purposes. That's why they are able to, pick up the heartbeat. A heart is beating. That means something is alive. And this person that I was debating actually had the nerve to say, well, a heartbeat is not just because something has a heartbeat, it's not necessarily alive. That was their position. And, I find that position to be ridiculous because anytime a woman goes to a physician and they're checking on the status of the baby in the womb, they monitor the heartbeat to see if the baby is alive, if the baby is doing well. And they can, detect whether or not there's an anomaly in the heartbeat, and they determine whether or not the fetus is viable and all that kind of stuff. So that fetus is a living creature. It's living. It's life. So the notion that it's not life is ridiculous. And the fact of the matter is, the whole debate about sustainability outside of the womb, has relevance to a degree. The fact of the matter is, the fetus is a human being in development. The fetus eventually becomes a fully developed person. And by snuffing out that fetus, you are taking a human life. There's no logical way around that fact. And in my discussion on Facebook, the issue of the death penalty came up as well. Like someone used that issue to try to point out the hypocrisy of people who support life. And this is my position with respect to that whole issue. I find it odd that these same people who are against the death penalty, these same people that want to protect murderers, convicted murderers, under any circumstance, they want to preserve that life. Even if that person blows up a federal building like Timothy McVeigh, where he killed like 200 people, from what I remember, or even in a situation like the 9/11 hijackers, where they bombed the World Trade Center. They crashed those planes into the World Trade Center and killed thousands of people. Or even in situations where you have these mass killers going to school like Sandy Hook and shoot up the school. These anti-death penalty advocates think that the lives of those stinking evil killers should be preserved. They think that those lives are so precious that they shouldn't be executed. But these same people, these same anti-death penalty advocates, they don't have any problem at all with innocent, vulnerable, unborn babies being butchered, ripped apart, vacuumed out of the womb, and discarded like garbage. They don't have any problem with that. And I think that that's hypocritical. I think that it is disgusting, frankly. That's what I think about it. And I understand the whole dichotomy, the whole issue of Black Lives Matter being, solely an issue that deals with police brutality. And I understand that that should be a top priority of the Black Lives Matter groups and all that kind of stuff. I understand that. I understand that that's a separate issue, as I have pointed out to others. But we have to cherish Black life, not just when it's killed by police. We have to cherish Black life and just human life in the womb as well. We have to. Now, some people wanted to talk about like how important it is for a woman to be able to choose, to have that right. And some people said it's tyranny if a woman doesn't have that right. Well, when I look at photographs of discarded and aborted fetuses, when I see their limbs ripped apart in bits and pieces, when I see them lying in their own blood, discarded and destroyed, to me, the life of that baby outweighs that whole issue of choice. When I see that discarded human life destroyed, that's what I think about. And I just find it odd that life is defined based on the circumstances with these pro choice advocates. On one hand, if someone has a miscarriage, these pro-lifers, actually these pro-choice people, they will mourn the loss of that baby. They will comfort the mother in that kind of situation. They will be there to support her, and they will mourn the loss of that baby just like it was a human being, like it was a precious life. If a woman is assaulted while she's pregnant and she loses the baby, people will mourn the loss of that baby. These same people who advocate choice will mourn the loss of that baby. If the woman has an accident and she loses the baby, again, they will mourn the loss of that baby. But if the mother makes a conscious decision to abort that baby, they won't mourn the loss of the baby. They will celebrate it as a choice. To me, that's a living contradiction that makes no sense. So yes, I think that abortion is morally wrong. It's the destruction of human life. Now the question is whether or not it should be legal or illegal, and whether or not the mother should be punished for having an abortion. And I just want to briefly just talk about that for a second. As I said at the beginning, I wasn't really focused on the legal issues in this whole discussion, but I'm going to briefly talk about, just about my position, whether or not it should be illegal. See, we live in a disposable society, in a society based on instant gratification. Instant satisfaction, where people don't have any um, patience, where people are living in the moment, where people are driven by hedonism and lust and all that kind of stuff. We live in a wicked society, where people engage in all kinds of wickedness. And I'm not claiming to be some saint or anything like that, or some holy person or anything like that. But that's the kind of society we live in. So when people have unplanned pregnancies, their first thought is, well, let me get rid of this. Just like how you get rid of some food that you don't like. These people feel like their babies are disposable like that. And literally, you have cases where people have thrown babies in trash. So they dispose of their babies like garbage. You see these aborted babies all ripped apart, laying in blood, their body parts dismembered. Because we live in such a society that's disposable, a society that's based on a culture of death. And in such a society, even if abortion was to be outlawed tonight, because we live in such a society that's disposable, where people have these values that are based on instant gratification, based on, the lack of value for anything. Even if it was illegal, these people would find a way to still have abortions, to still take human life. And a law that's unenforceable is a law that's really not a good law to be enacted, or not an effective law. Let me put it that way, not an effective law. Much like prohibition. They banned alcohol and people still continue to sell alcohol and drink alcohol. Just like the war on drugs. All these drugs are illegal, but people can buy drugs anywhere in America. And people continue to use and sell drugs. Making those things illegal hasn't stopped drug abuse. It hasn't stopped people from selling drugs. They arrest one drug dealer and another drug dealer is on the corner, filling that vacuum. So outlawing abortion really is not the answer to the problem. What we need is a moral reformation where people have different type of values, a cultural type of revolution where people have value. They value human life. They don't take human life, where they have morals and they don't engage in conduct which puts people in a situation where they feel that they are compelled to go that route and take a life. That's what we need to focus more on, preventing unplanned pregnancies. That should be the route that's taken instead of illegal, making abortion illegal. That's what I think about the situation. Um, that's the route that we need to go in. I'm sure that there are plenty of parents out there who contemplated having an abortion, but they didn't go through with it. And every day when they look in the eyes of their child who could have been aborted, I'm sure that many of them thank God for the blessing of having that child in their life. They thank God to be around that child, when they play with that child, when they talk to that child, when they educate and guide that child, when they hug that child. So those are my thoughts about this issue. Tell me what you think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace. Oh, and before I go, I want to let you all know that probably on Sunday around 11, I will do another live stream. It'll probably last about an hour, or maybe a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on the flow of the discussion. I want to thank everybody who watched my last live stream, especially the people that watched it live and participated in the conversation in the chat room. I really appreciate your participation. And this time, there will be no technical difficulties. I think I have found the answer to the problem with the echo on the live stream. So I look forward to you all participating in that discussion on Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.